We'll just skip that part. All right. So tonight we're going to keep going on the section of who God is not. If you would like to follow along in the chapters in the book, it's chapters 10 and 11 in the Who Is This God Person Anyway. Just real quick again, it's free on altitude.church/next. Which is also where you will find these videos. They're going there. You just click the button that has the video link, and it will take you right into that as well. So tonight is one of the conversations that inevitably happens no matter what small group I have ever been a part of. Every life group, every small group that I've ever been a part of, at some point or another, we start talking about what you might know as the question of free will. Now, if you were to take a theology class, they might use words like Wesleyan Arminianism, Calvinism, or some of those type things. But ultimately, the question at hand comes down to, do we have free will? And if so, just how much free will do we have? So years ago, I was a professor where, you show up when the other guy can't be there, an interim kind of professor guy, adjunct. And I taught the introduction to philosophy and ethics. And so we would do these nice ethical and philosophical quandaries, right? So I'm going to do one of those for you here. So keep your mind open, and you are at Walmart. Everyone's favorite store, right? Whenever we go on vacation, the first place we have to go is always Walmart. So you're at Walmart and you have, let's say, $1,000. You can buy anything in the store you want. Do you have free will? Yes?
No.
As long as you have enough money, okay. So there's a limitation on you have $1,000, so you have free will, but if there's a refrigerator there, you probably can't buy the nicest model of it. Okay.
And if they have what you want.
If they have what you want, okay, so you have free will, but you're limited by what's in the store. So who decides what goes into the store? Do you decide that? With your money, kind of? Yeah, so like Target, they have a brand, right? They have their, what is Target's brand? It's Archer Farms, I think. Something like that. Okay, so you're at Walmart. Can you buy Archer Farms? No, because you have to buy Up and Up or Great Value, right? So you have free will, but there's these limitations on it in the sense that, yes, you are making choices, but the options you have been limited by someone else. Told you we'd get deep. So the question of this night, or this part of it, is how much free will do we really have? We all say, okay, we have free will. So that question has been answered differently by Christian theologians. This isn't like we're going off to some other branch of another religion. Like, we're staying within the tree that is the Christian faith, and different people have answered the questions very differently. Some would say, yes, we have complete and total free will. Every decision we make, we are free to make that decision however we would like. Others say that God actually predetermines our choices for us, or at least he limits the options that we have. So the grocery store analogy is just one way to look at it. Like, you can go into a grocery store, you can buy anything that's in the grocery store, and yet think about if you've ever been in a business where you have to be a part of product selection. Think about the thousands of hours that go into what products go into the store, where on the shelves they go, what part of the store they are in, Like someone figured out if they put the gum and the candy and those things by the registers, that you're more likely to make an impulse buy at the end. So they meticulously study human behavior to figure out how to influence you to buy a candy bar before you make your checkout selections. So what level of free will do we have when things are selected by someone else? So this becomes what we call the problem, although it's not a problem, of free will. Because the reality is God could have created us as robots. He could have programmed us to have certain responses. If this happened, we just do this every time. Really, that's the existential crisis we're having right now around AI. Like, we want AI to do exactly what we tell it to do, and then it does something else, and we're like, oh no, it's alive. It's thinking for itself. How long until Judgment Day, right? Like, yeah, that's a real kind of concern right now. But it opens up this conversation about what is actually free will. Like, if you've followed AI trends, they talk about how AI hallucinates. It introduces things into the equation that you don't know where it came from. You didn't tell it to do that. Like, one of my favorite things, last year when I was training for the force, we had this long list of things that we were going to be studying for one of the tests. It's all Colorado law, right? CRS, Colorado Revised Statutes. And somebody showed me through Google Notebook how you can put your test notes into an AI and it creates a podcast episode. It's a male voice and a female voice talking to one another. And if I were to play it for you and not tell you that this was AI, you'd be like, where'd you get this podcast? But here's the interesting thing. I put in a certain set of data expecting a certain set of results, right? And yet this is all legal and law stuff. And so the podcast hosts, the guy starts talking about this certain legal precedent, and then the girl goes, oh, that's kind of like if these kids were to do this, 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 and that. And she was right, but it was nowhere in my notes. It came up with this example that maybe it pulled from the internet, maybe it did, whatever. But like when AI hallucinates, when it comes up with its own stuff, we start to question the boundaries of, okay, well now, did that just make its own choice? And obviously, those who are very against the idea that Terminator 2 Judgment Day is going to happen at some point, they want the computers to do exactly what we say and nothing else. It's literally turn this switch, this result happens, right? And God could have created us that way. He could have created beings that always respond positively, that never doubt or question him. But we were given free will, which means that we can choose other than God's perfect will for our lives. We can choose other than God's best choices for us. And even more than that, our choices impact other people. So God could have created us as robotic sheep. That's the fun little hook for this one. But what would be the problem in that? Have any of you ever tried to control your children? Oh, that got a reaction, right? You think what you want is your kids to be perfectly obedient and always do exactly what you tell them the second you do. But what you really are blessed by is when they come up with stuff on their own. And they do things like, Mom, Dad, I just wanted to do this for you today. And you're like, oh. Counter that to a very real world example that's difficult to talk about, but in Japanese culture right now, it is very, very popular to have waifu, which would be robots, dolls, some cases pillows of anime characters or various things like that, that you legally marry. You have a relationship with the robot, with the whatever. And the computer programming has gotten so intricate that they can program it to respond exactly the way that you would want that thing to react. And when you watch commentary, video, things like that about these experiences, the people will say things like, I've never experienced this level of love. But is it really love when you've programmed it to respond exactly that way? It's when we make choices that prove we are choosing loving or choosing to be not loving. When you're forced to love, that's not love, right? We have words for this. Hate to tell you, but Beauty and the Beast is not the most romantic movie you've ever seen. She actually has Munchausen syndrome, right? It's a problem, right? She's been groomed by the Beast, but I digress. So what is a real relationship? Well, Hannah Whitall Smith once said, "Nothing can set our hearts at rest but a real acquaintance with God." In other words, being known by God and also getting to know God. But you can't get to know a computer program the same way you can a person. The lines are getting blurry. Like one of my friends has trained ChatGPT to be his counselor, and I think he calls him uncle or something like that. But either way, he's trained his ChatGPT to be a family member. But is ChatGPT really choosing him, or has he programmed? Like, you get the idea in this. This is a big thing. But God was willing to risk real relationship with us. He was willing to lay out his good and perfect plans and give us the ability to not walk in them, to not obey them, to not choose him. Ultimately, when we talk eternity, heaven and hell, what God is doing is just respecting our choices. We've either chosen to walk closer to him in actual relationship, or we've said, I don't want that. I want you to go away from me, and he does, right? So this issue of free will comes down to the fact that if we don't have some measure of real and true free will, we don't actually have a relationship with God. And vice versa. So I would encourage you tonight, as you're in your group, to spend a little bit of time talking about what free will looks like. I promise every time we come up in a small group, it gets interesting, at least. Now, I mentioned early on in this experience that one of the ways, or one of the reasons why it's important to dig into a truly deep biblical experience and study God's Word is because it will help you understand other things. Pop culture, media, from podcasts to video games to movies to books to art to Renaissance paintings. Well, that's kind of the same thing, but modern art to Renaissance paintings. They oftentimes pull from biblical ideals. So how many of you guys have ever seen the movie I, Robot? Oh, good. That's a lot better average than the last time I asked if you saw a pop culture thing. So great. So I watched I, Robot years ago when I was in college. And at that time, I was studying to be a pastor. I was in theology classes. And it was interesting to me the things that I would not have noticed about the movie had I not had some experience with the conversation around Calvinism, which is the idea that you are predestined to your eternal, like God said, you are going to heaven and you are going to hell, and it wasn't your choice, versus Wesleyan Arminianism, which is some version of you have chosen God and God recognizes those choices. So if you go into the movie I, Robot and watch, the woman's name, the female protagonist that Will Smith kind of likes, her name is Calvin, out of John Calvin. The robot's name is Sonny, There's a very famous work by Robert Schenck called Life in the Sun that talks about what free will would actually look like. And all of a sudden he's named Sonny. And you get these conversations. So I'm going to play about 2 minutes. YouTube, if I have to cut this out for copyright reasons, it'll just glitch and you'll be back. But for everybody else, about 2 minutes on this movie, then I'm going to talk about one more real quick, that you don't even realize how deep the conversation gets around this until you start cluing into and paying attention to these things. Remember, we talked about the idea of one of the ways we get our misshapen views of God and reality is by not critically assessing and addressing what we are putting into our minds. So this is one of those things where when you start watching, you go, oh, wait a second, that's what they're talking about.
There have always been ghosts in the machine. Random segments of code that have grouped together to form unexpected protocols. Unanticipated. These free radicals engender questions of free will, creativity, and even the nature of what we might call the soul. Why is it that when some robots are left in darkness, they will seek out the light? Why is it that when robots are stored in an empty space, they will group together rather than stand alone? How do we explain this behavior? Random segments of code? Or is it something more? When does a perceptual schematic become consciousness? When does a difference engine become the search for truth? When does a personality simulation become the bitter moat of a soul?
Interesting, right? Think about how that movie was like, what, 20 years ago now? Good Lord, 15 at least. And it's asking these questions that now, when we talk about AI, it's like those are way different questions now. Like, way different results on our conversation. But think about that. When does a personality matrix become personality? When does programming become a real living being? And of course, in the movie, they wrestle with, does this robot Sonny have a soul? If you've seen, there's a show, it's the language in it's terrible, unfortunately. It's called Severance on Apple TV, and they sever the back of their part of their brain so that they have one personality and memory set that goes to work, and then that one shuts off and they go home and a new one turns on so that they can't remember either one. So they start calling them their innies and their outies. And they start talking about, does the innie have a soul? Or is it really just a subset? It's crazy. Like there's this, of all things, this philosophical discussion at a dinner table between a throuple, why not, about whether or not the man's innie has a separate soul. And he starts going, yes. Well, he goes, why did you go to this company? He goes, because of Jesus Christ. And he's like, Jesus? He's like, yes, because my outie is going to hell, but I thought my innie might have a chance to go to heaven. So like these questions, like this is not just deep philosophy that you could sit for hours and read Plato and Aristotle and Descartes, but these are questions that we really start to wrestle with differently now because of the world we live in at this moment. So another one, this one I can recommend you watch. I think it's actually quite interesting, is a movie called The Adjustment Bureau. It's Matt Damon, right? Yeah, not Ben Affleck, one of the two of them. Matt Damon movie from, again, about 20 years ago. And as you go through the movie, you see this politician character played by Matt Damon, and he meets the girl of his dreams. And then he meets Anthony Mackie, who tells him that wasn't a part of the plan. And so the whole movie is him trying to get away from the plan. And there's these adjustment agents that kind of call themselves angels throughout. And so that's kind of the setup now where he's about to meet one of the big adjusters in there, which is Terrence Stamp, who unfortunately died a few months ago. So, yeah. Hello?
Frustrating, isn't it? My name is Thompson.
Whatever happened to free will?
We actually tried free will before. After taking you from hunting and gathering to the height of the Roman Empire, we stepped back to see how you'd do on your own. You gave us the Dark Ages for 5 centuries, until finally we decided we should come back in. The chairman thought that maybe we just needed to do a better job with teaching you how to ride a bike before taking the training wheels off again. So we gave you the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, scientific revolution. For 600 years, we taught you to control your impulses with reason. Then in 1910, we stepped back again. Within 50 years, you'd brought us World War I, the Depression, fascism, the Holocaust, and capped it off by bringing the entire planet to the brink of destruction in the Cuban Missile Crisis. At that point, a decision was taken to step back in again before you did something that even we couldn't fix. You don't have free will, David. You have the appearance of free will.
You expect me to believe that? I make decisions every day.
You have free will over which toothpaste you use or which beverage to order at lunch, but humanity just isn't mature enough to control the important things.
So you handle the important things. Well, the last time I checked, the world's a pretty screwed up place.
It's still here. If we'd left things in your hands, it wouldn't be.
Interesting, right? Now you've got all these philosophical movies that you can go watch. The theology, philosophy in the mix of things. So that's the conversation around, do we have free will? So again, there are very dedicated Christian answers that would give ultimately both sides. Calvin was very famous, any of your Baptist churches, things like that, would follow after the teachings of John Calvin. And then there was a guy by the name of Theodorus Beza who took things way farther. John Calvin essentially said that God determines, he decides who goes to heaven and who goes to hell, but he chooses some and passes over others. Theodorus Beza said that God chooses, you go to heaven, you go to hell. Like, God makes that choice. So what kind of a God does that create? Think of the Terrence Stamp in this video here. If that were, basically an angel, they call them adjusters, but essentially, if that were the idea of an angel, it says you don't have free will. You have the appearance of free will, right? Thank you, General Zod. That's who that was. But you get that idea of like, okay, what does that say not only about us, but what does that say about God? If we have free will, truly, truly, truly free will, we have the ability even to choose to reject God ultimately to hell. Why can't God just control that? Just control us so that we will choose him. Kind of like being in a relationship where the person says, well, you're stuck with me. You have to love me, whether you want to or not. Right? It's not a real relationship. We call that abuse, actually. And that's a problem. So what does it say about our idea of God when we see God as someone who controls our every step? Or at least just the big things. Like I was talking with a family at one point, their struggle was the evil that we see in the world, which we're going to get to in the next section. We're going to talk about the problem of evil. But the solution that was posited was, well, God should just stop them. Okay, well, when should he stop them? Should he stop them when they've killed 100 people? Should he stop them when they've killed 50? Should he stop them when he's killed 1? Should he stop them when he has the evil? At what point does God say, no, I'm sorry, you don't get to make this choice anymore. You don't have free will. You have the appearance of free will. We can trust you with what toothpaste you buy, but we can't trust you with the big decisions. This is not something, by the way, you're going to master, solve, and figure out in the next 5 minutes. Next 5 months. Like literally, this was the life's work of some prominent thinkers across history to dig into these very questions. But what I want to bring to the table is it shapes your view of God depending on to what degree of control you believe God has and to what degree of control he allows us to have. Because if God is truly so daring that he would give us the ability even to reject him to the point where we might spend eternity away from him versus God chose you to go to heaven, but not you. Do you see how that can create a very different deity in our heads? So we're going to confront the idea tonight that God has your best interests at heart. I am going to move this up so I can see the timer because I can't see it right now. That God is a God who has your best interests at heart. So page 49. Donald Miller in his book Blue Like Jazz says, to be in a relationship with God is to be loved purely and furiously. If you grew up in a certain age, Blue Like Jazz was the hot thing. Now Donald Miller is a business consultant. And if you know his stuff now, it's all about your story brand and all that. It's kind of interesting switch. But what he's saying here is true. To be in a relationship with God is to be loved in a way that you probably haven't even experienced the fullness of. In fact, I know you haven't, because he says his love has no bounds. It goes beyond limitations. It is so big. But what we wrestle with is it's very hard for many people, maybe because of the question of, does God control or not control? Maybe because of the choices others make, that you just wish God would say, okay, I get that everybody has their, free will, but if you just stop him at 2 drinks so he doesn't kill the family on the way home, that's where I would step in. But you make those decisions and then you become God. You become the decider of reality. And so it's hard for a lot of people to truly believe that God has their best interests at heart. So Jesus in John 10:10 very famously said, there is this thief who comes to kill and to steal and to destroy. But he says, I have come that they might have life and have it more abundantly. Now, we're going to talk about this in a few months at this point, but I'll give you a sneak peek into the Greek on that. See, Greek has a way of using words that we just can't quite replicate in English. But you get the idea when we talk about love, right? I've said it before, it's my best go-to example, but I can use 2 sentences and both of them are absolutely true. I love Taco Bell and I love my wife. Hopefully there's a difference in the word love when I talk about the one that creates gaseous emissions and the one that creates heartache. No, I'm just kidding. She didn't watch that, it's okay. But you get the idea, right? The word love needs explanation. So when Jesus said, I have come that they might have life, there's actually multiple words that he could have used there in the Greek language. 2 of them in particular would have been more common, or the most common. The first word would be bios. You don't need to know it, it's okay, but I'm going to tell you the quick definitional side of it. Bios is where we get the word biology. Right? Anything that is a biosphere is something that has life. Bios has to do with quantity, has to do with just more of life. So if Jesus would have said, I have come that you might have bios and have it more abundantly, all he would really be saying is, I've come to give you long lives. It doesn't really matter the quality therein. But the word he actually used there is zoe. It has a D before the Z, but it's spelled zoe, Z-O-E, zoe. Zoe is a word that means more quality. It has a spiritual aspect to it. So when Jesus said, I have come that they might have life, he's saying, I have come that they might have a different kind of life. You see this other force over here that we've talked about with the three wills, right? The one who comes to steal, who comes to kill, who comes to destroy. Your car is locking, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Set that entity on one side and then contrast with the God of the universe who has come to give you life, and not just more years where you go, gosh, would somebody please just put this out of our misery, but a quality to it, a spiritual nature to it. So this verse does tell us that there is a rival faction that wants to steal, kill, and destroy. He'll steal your joy. He'll kill relational harmony between you and God and you and others. He'll destroy your self-worth. Will send you into shame spirals. The enemy of our souls isn't omniscient. He doesn't know everything, but he's studied human beings for quite some time, so he does know how to trigger and how to work into our lesser appetites, so to speak. That's the one that comes to steal and kill and destroy. Jesus, however, comes to stand against what destroys us. Now, we're going to talk about this again soon, but this is the idea of God's wrath. And we're going to talk in a few months how God's wrath is the most loving thing there is, because it is God standing against what destroys you. And then we come to the Hebrew understanding of life. So when we talk about life, you see, Jesus' original followers, they didn't call themselves Christians, they called themselves the Way. It roots at least somewhat out of this Hebrew understanding that God, the Creator, designed life so that certain paths lead to goodness and life and health, and certain choices lead to destruction. And so wisdom was actually finding the way God designed life to work and walking in that way. And the fool is one who saw how God designed life to work and walked the other way. The one who didn't know is ignorant. The fool is the one who knows but goes the other direction. So Jesus contrasts this steal, kill, destroy, this rival faction that wants to destroy and accuse and be the enemy of your souls, with himself. With himself. The problem is, for us, sometimes it just feels like God is being unfair, right? Back when my daughter was in the process of being adopted, we started the adoption process in Oklahoma, and then we moved to Ohio. And I don't know if you know anything about adoption laws across states, but there's interstate compacts, but every state is their own Wild West, and they do whatever they want, right? So we started in Oklahoma, we took classes, we go to Ohio, oh, you actually have to take other classes. You have to do these other things. You have to go through the process again. So we're like, great, fine, we'll do that. So we did all those things. They brought us Jazzy, and at first we could only be her foster to adopt family. And so she flew out to Ohio. They dropped her off with us. We got to have her in our lives, and then God called us to move to Colorado. So that's how long this process took for us. Colorado, we had to restart everything. So we had to go through the whole process again. Finally, 3 different states agreed that we were the right family for Jazzy. Problem is, we live in Colorado. She has to be officially adopted out of Oklahoma. So we have to drive back to Oklahoma. And that's fine. It's a boring drive. Kansas is flat and boring at the best of times. But there also just happened to be a blizzard. So we are now driving what would normally take us about 9 hours. It was a 18-hour trip we stopped because we literally we like counted down the hours to exactly when we had to be at the courthouse. So we were able to stop at a hotel room for about 4.5 hours and sleep, and then get right back on the road so that we could be there in time. My daughter, who was born with drugs in her system, biological challenges, she was literally the size of a kitten when she was born. My wife has a picture somewhere of her holding Jazzy in her hand, and she's about that big, right? So because of other people's choices, she had some struggles. Well, she has adrenal issues and some things like that. Functionally, when she gets triggered and hits a tipping point, her body biologically no longer has the ability to limit itself. And you know how they say people have fight or flight? She has fight or fight or fight or right now, let's go. That's it, right? At this time, she's little. She's in a car seat. She's not really, all the time entertained by an iPad yet, things like that. And we're in the middle of a blizzard, and my daughter is freaking out. Let me out, let me out. How could you do this to me? How dare you? This hurts. She's just all in it. And what are we going to do? Like, we literally have a clock against us. We have to get to the courthouse to finish this process. We have a blizzard outside. We're having to take back roads we don't know. I'm staring at the GPS and looking up at this. And you know the term snow blindness? Where it's snowing so hard, like if you just drift into it, you just, whee. Yeah, I'm fighting that. And my daughter is screaming bloody murder, telling us, how dare you? How dare you do this to me? What we were doing was adopting her. Was taking her out of these previously difficult situations and introducing her into the family, showing her love. But in that moment, she absolutely could not see that. So when people think about whether or not God has our best interests at heart, oftentimes we think about those moments where we're in the car seat and we don't like being restrained. We don't like being told we can't go outside and play in the snow. We don't like being told that there's a certain timeline that just doesn't meet our own. And yet God is going, child, I love you. We've got this. Trust me. Right? So we oftentimes struggle with the idea that God has our best interests at heart. But biblically, God, through the words of Jesus, says his whole purpose is to give us life, for us to be in relationship with him. He's come to heal the brokenhearted, to lift the sick and heal the oppressed and be there for the poor and the downtrodden. Just sometimes when we're stuck in our car seats, it just doesn't feel like that, does it? So Dr. Sanders had this great quote. He said, God knows how life works, and far from being eager to punish you, he wants to give us a life that we enjoy to the fullest. So when we relate with God, we have to challenge the thoughts that God is out to get us, that God is causing us pain, that God is, remember we talked about those critically assessed thoughts that we have, like when somebody says like, oh, God will never give you more than you can handle. It's actually not in the Bible, by the way. God actually will let you experience more than you can handle, but it's not because he's trying to break you. There's a combination effect of the choices of others coming into our lives. There's God allowing things that we think, how dare you, when it's kind of more akin to us putting my daughter in the car seat and going, babe, like, I know all you want to do is go and just play in the back seat and run and jump around without a seatbelt, but you don't see the snowstorm. You've never driven the car before. You don't know in a moment how we could go off the side of the road. And your car seat is what's keeping you safe. But it's a lot easier to be the one in the car seat going, how dare you? I hate you. You're ruining my life. My daughter's only 10. I've heard those words already. I'm like, oh, great. You're a teenager. This is fantastic. I told my wife, when she turns teenager, she's yours. Just saying. But what this means is that God created life for his good pleasure and for us to have a purpose, that we can trust God. It means that God shouldn't, and thankfully doesn't, give you what you want the very moment you want it. And it means even in trying times, which could be caused by our own choices or the choices of others, that God is actually shaping us and preparing us for something better. God is like a wise parent who sees all of life and yes, gives us all the roads ahead, but says, look, kid, I know where that road goes. You can walk it if you want to, but let me tell you where it ends. And sometimes when the situations of life strap us in, he says, no, I'm actually not going to let you out of this right now because you've never driven on this road before. You don't know what it's like to be snowblind. You don't know how in a second this could go off the side of a cliff. God has our best interests at heart. Now, the flip side of that. Another distortion of God. I'll see how far I can get into this one here, but I do want you to wrestle with this in your life group time here in a moment. What does it mean that God created reality to bless us? What does it mean that God is shaping us, preparing us for something better? And what does it mean that we can trust God even in our biggest storms? Oh, you know what? I forgot I had this in here. So forget going on to the next one. I'm going to tell this one. Okay. The pearl analogy. This was something my youth pastor actually told me when I was 12 years old. So, Chandra, know that you're making an eternal difference in kids' lives. You have no clue the things that they're going to remember and say, and it'll shape their lives. So, my youth pastor told the story of a little girl, and he told it as if it could have been a real event and it could be a parable. But either way, it doesn't matter. The heart of it is that this is an analogy to God's heart. So this little girl, when she was really little, she got this strand of fake pearls. And the fake pearls were her favorite thing ever. She wore them with every outfit, whether they went with it or not. My daughter does some of that kind of stuff too. She has her favorite things. And actually, I don't happen to notice, but my wife, thankfully, will step in and go, baby girl, nothing you're wearing matches right now. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing, right? But she has her favorite things that just go with everything, even when they don't. So this girl has these pearls, but they're, what they used to call the 5 and dime kind, the kind that you get at the Woolworths or the old grocery stores where, it's not real. It's some sort of plastic, but they're pretty and she wants them. So as the girl starts to get older and gets to her teenage, right in that in-between phase of years, the father wants to do something special for her. And so without her knowing, he goes out and he buys her a set of real, genuine pearls. Just that necklace that every little girl, or at least that one, grows up just wanting, right? And so he comes to her and he has it kind of, proverbially behind his back. And he says, daughter, I have something for you. But before I give it to you, I need your pearls. I need your necklace. She goes, but Dad, this is my, I wear this is my favorite thing ever. I know. But for you to receive what I have for you, you're going to have to give me your pearl necklace. And she refuses. He says, that's okay. It's your choice. So he comes back to her again later. He says, daughter, I have something for you. But in order for you to receive it, you have to give me your pearl necklace. And she's been wrestling in her mind with this, right? Why would her dad want to take away the thing that is most precious to her? And she started telling herself stories. Maybe Dad doesn't really love me. I bet he's just going to take those pearls. He's going to go sell my favorite thing and he's going to buy himself cigarettes or something. All of a sudden, she starts to create this tale in her mind about this dad who's just thinking about all the time how he can take things from her. who just wants what she has and doesn't care what she loves or respects or cares about. And so the second time he asks, she gets more defiant. She says, no, these are mine and you can't have them. He says, okay. But when you're ready, I have something for you. And over the course of months, she starts to get to know her father better and better, and she starts to see, like, okay, well, in every other area, he watches out for me. He seems to care about me. So maybe he doesn't want to sell my pearls for cigarettes. And I mean, let's be honest, they're not worth that much anyway. It's just they're special to me. Why would he want the one thing that's special to me? So she wrestles and wrestles. And then finally, she has this moment where she goes, you know what? He's my dad. He loves me. He takes care of me. I don't understand why he wants these. But if he wants them, I'll give them to him. And so without even the father coming to the daughter comes to the father and says, Dad, look, I don't know why you want these, but you've asked for them, so here's my pearls. Just remember, these are like my favorite thing, so be really careful with them, okay? So the father takes them and he puts them in his pocket, and daughter, I wanted you to make this choice for yourself, but you've been holding on to something that's an imitation, that's a fake. It looks beautiful from the outside, but they don't hold up. They're not real. They'll break easy. They're just shined over with some sort of like a little coating. They're not actually the thing that you think they are. But I've been waiting for so long for you to experience what that real thing is. He takes the pearl necklace and gives her something that's real. Oyster boogers. That's what they are, actually. I don't mean to bring down the mood or anything like that, but like it's snot that formed over and get crystallized. So I'm sorry if I ruined it for you. Read the room. But you get the idea. There are so many things in our lives where we have conditioned ourselves. We've been conditioned by the choices of others, by the events of our world, where God says, child, I have something for you. And we just take those pearls and we go, but God, you don't realize, like, this thing is my favorite thing. Why would you want to take this from me? But when we recognize and understand the heart of God, things we've talked about, that he's a true good father, he's consistent with the person of Jesus. So every time you see Jesus in Scripture, that is the exact nature and character of Yahweh. That the Holy Spirit is a gift given to us so that we can know how to navigate the world when we don't know how to navigate the world. And then we have that question, but do I trust him? And I want to tell you, the more you give up the fake pearls, the more he turns over the real things in so many areas of your life. But you have to trust him. You have to wrestle with that. So the question, and I'm going to end us here and go to group, we'll save the next part for next week, is, do we have free will? And what does that mean about God if we do? Because ultimately, the question of free will or not comes down to, do we trust that God has our best interests at heart? Or do we believe that God is shaping our lives for his amusement, his enjoyment, or maybe even his capriciousness? But wrestle with the words of Jesus. The enemy comes to steal and kill and destroy. But I have come so that they might have life. Oh, and by the way, not only is it a certain kind of life, that Zoe, spiritual, qualitative, worth living life, but Jesus' promise was, I have given it to them abundantly. So what do we keep holding that are those fake pearls when God is like, no, I've got the abundant thing ready to give you. So that's in for the video. We're going to break into groups here. Thank you for joining online. And I know several of you are watching this tonight because you're out tonight. So thanks for doing that. All right. Let me end this. And